Okay, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're going to look at exactly how the government officially hides revolutionary military technology. You know, the actual hardware of tomorrow. And they do it behind this crazy veil of dry bureaucracy and, believe it or not, literal UFO lore. It's this absolutely fascinating intersection of administrative secrecy, cutting-edge aerospace engineering, and deliberate psychological operations.
To understand how this complex architecture works, here is our agenda. First, we'll look at special access programs. Then, pioneering the space age, followed by the stealth breakthrough, UFOs as a smokescreen, and finally, next-generation space tech.
Section 1. Special Access Programs and the Bureaucracy of the Impossible. So, before a piece of world-changing military technology can actually fly, it first has to exist on paper. Or actually, scratch that, it has to be completely hidden on paper. We have to start right here with SAPs, or Special Access Programs. These are the crucial administrative frameworks the government designed to safeguard their most sensitive secrets. Historically, these are the exact programs that have given nations a massive strategic advantage. They're the quiet engines of physical military technology, operating totally in the background, but designed to revolutionize industries and, quite literally, make the impossible possible.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how deep the bureaucracy of secrecy really goes. On one hand, you have acknowledged SAPs. That means the public might know a program exists, but the details? Totally locked down. But then you have unacknowledged SAPs. Let's say the military is developing some new physical technology that could completely revolutionize warfare. They might put it in an unacknowledged SAP called something vague, like Program ABC. In this scenario, the program's very name is classified, its existence is flat out denied, and the funding is entirely disguised within a completely different program. It's basically a financial and administrative black hole, perfectly designed to protect advanced hardware.
Moving on to Section 2, Pioneering the Space Age and the Cold War R&D Machine.
Okay, so now we know how they hide the funding and the paperwork, right? Let's look at what the military was actually building behind those closed doors during the mid-20th century. The crucial point here is captured perfectly in this quote from the House Select Committee on Astronautics and Space Exploration. Early space exploration was fundamentally dual use. Think about it. The exact same rockets being developed for cargo and passenger delivery could easily be repurposed to carry thermonuclear weapons. The satellites engineered to safely return men from orbit. They could also be used to drop bombs. Peaceful and military space capabilities were, and really still are, technically inseparable.
Now, to actually achieve this dual-use vision, the scale of the operation had to be absolutely staggering. Just look at this 1950s document outlining the U.S. Army's technical services. We are talking about employing 40,000 personnel, pulling in a massive chunk of top-tier scientific and engineering talent. They were operating $1 billion worth of research and development facilities with an annual operating expense of over $400 million. And remember, this is in 1950s money. That is just an enormous mobilization of resources dedicated strictly to advanced military tech during the Cold War.
What's absolutely wild is the sheer sci-fi ambition of these early military technology programs. While the general public was just beginning to grasp the concept of basic orbital flight, the military was already actively studying the feasibility of moon-based relay stations and lunar weapons systems. I mean, that's the ultimate deterrent, right? Because an enemy couldn't easily reach the moon to stop a retaliation. They were also pioneering entirely new fields like terradynamics to understand land vehicle movement, and they were pushing the absolute limits of electronics through micro-miniaturization.
And we have to be clear, this wasn't just hypothetical whiteboard brainstorming. Take a look at the Diamond Ordnance Fuse Laboratory. By 1958, which is shockingly early for this level of technology, this lab had already won a top national award for making the greatest advances in miniature electronics. They, along with facilities like the Picatinny Arsenal, were running high-temperature ovens, altitude chambers, and inertial machines. They had to ensure this highly advanced military tech could survive a brutal trip to space, or, a trip to a target.
Section 3. The Stealth Breakthrough, Hiding in Plain Sight.
So, while the Army was heavily focused on celestial bodies and the dawn of the space age, the aerospace sector was trying to solve a very terrestrial problem. How do you make a physical aircraft entirely vanish from enemy radar? Up until this point, radar stealth was mostly considered pure speculation. But get this. Here is a brilliant historical irony for you. The breakthrough didn't come from thin air. Dennis Overholser, a mathematician and radar specialist at Lockheed Martin's legendary Skunk Works, actually solved the highly speculative problem of stealth by utilizing a set of mathematical formulas that had been published 9 years earlier by a Soviet physicist. They literally took adversary math and turned it into an invisible American strategic advantage.
But right here is where we hit a massive logistical wall, and it begs a critical question for this explainer. Look, you can hide funding on a spreadsheet, sure, and you can hide miniature electronics inside a secure lab, but developing an entirely new class of stealth aircraft requires actually flying them in the open sky. So, how on earth did the Pentagon hide these massive, highly distinctive test flights from both the American public and foreign adversaries?
Which brings us to Section 4, UFOs as a smokescreen, the ultimate PSYOP.
The answer to that question reveals one of the most astonishing and sustained psychological operations in modern history. And chronologically, this builds in a really fascinating way. First, in the late 40s, the government was legitimately investigating UFOs under Project Sign and Grudge because, well, unidentified objects in the sky are a genuine national security issue. But by 1953, the CIA convened Robertson panel concluded that while many sightings were just misidentifications, public reports of UFOs could actually be actively exploited for psychological warfare. Fast forward to the 1980s, and we see operations like the Air Force Office of Special Investigations allegedly pushing the fake Majestic 12 disinformation campaign. This was designed specifically to target and mislead researchers who are getting just a little too close to classified truths regarding military hardware.
So here's the incredible curtain reveal. Academic studies into influence operations show that elaborate, deliberately false stories of crashed alien spacecraft and extraterrestrial contact offered a perfect, ready-made smokescreen. By weaponizing the public's existing curiosity and belief in UFOs, intelligence agencies were able to keep prying eyes far, far away from the development, testing, and deployment of the very real stealth aircraft and drone technologies we just talked about. Think about it. If a civilian saw a highly classified, weird wedge-shaped stealth jet testing at dusk, it was vastly better for national security if they thought it was an alien spacecraft rather than an unacknowledged SAP.
When you realize that operations were actively used to deceive the public and muddy the waters just to protect secret hardware, you really begin to understand why today's actual government disclosures about unidentified anomalous phenomena, or UAPs, are causing such a profound cultural reaction. Researchers call this the transparency effect. When modern hearings finally validate that there are real anomalies in our skies, it clashes violently with decades of state-sponsored disinformation. It triggers what academics call ontological shock, basically a complete fracturing of people's worldviews. It is an incredibly messy process of untangling what was just a cover story for military tech from what is actually a genuine scientific mystery.
Section 5. Next Generation Space Tech, the FY26 Horizon. So, if the lore of UFOs was heavily utilized as a cover for 1980s stealth technology, what military technology is the government actually building right now for the future? Well, we don't have to guess entirely, because even the unclassified portions of the budget give us a major hint. Looking at the Space Force's research, development, test, and evaluation budget for fiscal year 2026, we see massive, real-world investments in bleeding-edge military hardware. They are rapidly developing things like meta-optics, edge computing tools, and neuromorphic imaging. This is the exact hardware designed to meet the threats posed by adversaries in the 2030s. Just like the pterodynamics and miniature electronics of the 1950s, this is the foundation of the next massive leap in defense capability. Which leaves us with this final, absolutely critical thought to ponder. As advanced military technology leaps into the future with meta-optics and next-generation space defense, we are also seeing a major push for transparency regarding actual UAPs. But can this new wave of hearings and reports ever fully repair the public trust that was intentionally broken by decades of deliberate, sci-fi smokescreens? It's a huge question that sits at the very heart of how we understand both our skies and the systems that secure them. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope it gave you a whole new lens to view this incredible topic.